this is the other half of Atelier Wen. We have Robin. How are
Hi.
you doing? How are you doing today, Robin?
Yeah. Very fine. I feel it's gonna be a busy day, so that's why I didn't go to the office just yet. I felt my boss may be there, and if he were to catch me there, he would ask me to straight work on the wonderful set of edits he has in mind for me for the presentation we're on. So,
Mhm.
but besides the busyness for today, no, it's all right, quite good as usual. Happy to be here chatting with you guys. Happy
Yeah,
to
good
be
to see you,
meeting
Robin.
you, Johnny. So yeah, good day.
All right. So, as I said, as I mentioned before, Robin, this is nothing too formal. It's going to be very casual. We
Mm-hmm.
basically just want to introduce you to our friends in Hong Kong and just let them know a little bit more about the brand and who you are. Because, as I mentioned, in Hong Kong, it's such a competitive market,
Mm-hmm.
um, we really want to bring out the underdogs. And we really felt that Atelier Wen is a perfect example, because I don't know if many of our friends know, but you guys actually came out from Kickstarter. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely you are.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, all
That's
right.
we started
So,
out.
so maybe what I'll do is I have a presentation here. So maybe we can just go through the slides and basically, you can narrate the slides and just let us know the Atelier Wen story.
Yeah, of course, definitely. So
Perfect.
I guess then let's start with who we are. So Atelier Wen, it was created by two people, Wilfried, my business partner, and myself.
Mhm.
How did Wilfried meet? Well, actually, we went to study in the same university in the UK, Warwick University. And funny thing is that we met on the very first day of the first year, and we were like, oh, what, you're both into like Chinese culture, and you're also like French. And that's how we sort of like came into each other, but we didn't really become friends straight on. We became friends when we both did like that exchange year in Peking University, when we were like, oh, there we meet again, and you're here and I'm there. And that's when we became friends. So we bonded during that year. I think it was 2015-16 in Peking University. And then when we both came back from China and were in the UK, actually all our friends had graduated because they were not doing year abroad. So it was just the two of us. And we were chatting about businesses and so on, because Wilfried is really into entrepreneurship. Before that, he had tried to start like some other ventures. And I think like at some point he saw some successful like Kickstarter watches Kickstarter projects, and he was like, oh, I know you're so into watches, like let's do something with watches. And then I was like, you know what we could do is like some premium, at the beginning was just premium like Chinese watches, and proudly made ones. And he initially was a bit puzzled. He was like, why would you want to do that? Why don't you want to do a minimalist watch company? Like I saw so many that are doing very well. And I was like, no, let me explain you. And that's why I gave him the rationale for Atelier Wen. And him actually being born in Hong Kong, having spent his childhood in Hong Kong, like he lived there till he was roughly like 12 or 13, and still being a permanent resident of Hong Kong. He was like, actually that means a lot to me, like the cultural aspect, like the idea of making it resonate like all over the world, of connecting people to that, of introducing people to this, of showing that, well, made in China can be really beautiful, can be really interesting, that it's made of talented people. That rings a bell to him. So he was like, yeah, you know what, let's do that. So we started therefore like actually working on the idea in the last year of university, last year of bachelor. And then we went both into masters. Wilfried went to do masters in Beijing in Tsinghua University. Myself, I went to do masters in London at London Business School. And during that year, basically what we did was designing the watches and eventually making prototypes. So we're not designers ourselves. So we worked with two Chinese designers, Liu Yuguan and Li Mingliang. And how did we come across them? That's actually an interesting story, because you have to know that one of my mentors in Beijing is a person named Li Wei, and Li Wei is one of the sort of the leaders of a thing called the China HoH Association, which is an official government unit which oversees both, let's say, like markets and productions for the local watch industry in China. And so anyway, it's therefore like really connected to everyone. So he knew we were looking for designers. He knew actually we had no funds whatsoever, no money, no nothing. And he was like, well, actually, let me introduce you to this friend of mine. And this friend, Song, she was a professor at the Beijing Institute of Fashion Technology, but her classes were really focused on watch design. And then she was like, you know what, guys, like in my last year, I have this module where students have to do like a complete project from like 0 to 1. They have to build the product. Why don't you do that in partnership with two of my students? Like that will be their final year project. And to be fair to them, you'll pay them a bit. But still, like it won't be as like a sort of like full-time pro designer, and themselves they'll get like hands-on experience, they'll get exposure and so on. So yeah, so that's, we're like, yeah, that's actually a great idea, and that's how we were paired with Liu Yuguan and Li Mingliang. So during a year, we worked on that design. So it was very, very slow because, I mean, they had classes. They were not like full-time employees of Atelier Wen. Wilfried had classes, I had classes. But very, very, very slowly we got there. And when it was quite beautiful is that like when we both graduated, basically the prototypes were like almost ready. So we were able to launch a Kickstarter just 2 months after we had like finished masters. So there was not like too much of a gap in terms of path, and and yeah, so that was quite well done. If I were to comment on,
but let me stop you there, Robin. So if I get this right, you guys actually studied your masters and produced the watch at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
and
so you guys never took like a gap year off to focus on the watch?
No, never. We were like, Wilfried is a really ambitious person. He was like, no, we can do it, definitely. You know, like for him, it's always like, we can do it. And likewise as well, I was like, yeah, he's in China, I'm there. Like, I mean, the opportunity is just too great. Like, I'm sure we can do it. To be fair with you, it was rather intense, especially when you. I mean, it's a bit weird because, you know, like before I entered Atelier Wen, I thought I knew everything about watches. I was like, yeah, I've been collecting since I'm 14 years old. I've been collecting Chinese watches since I'm like, what, 15 years old. I've been going there like so frequently, meeting with the people and so on. I felt I knew everything, but it was so wrong. Like there was so many stuff I had absolutely no clues about, so many things I had the wrong ideas about. So when you start, you know you're gonna get into those walls, you're gonna run into them, and that's actually like something which is quite time consuming, and that happened to us during this year. And that's when we found out actually, like, despite my so-called expertise, we had no idea how to manufacture watches. We were convinced, you know, for instance, there was like watch factories who were doing everything from like the case to the dial to the hands. And I remember for a few months, I just kept telling Wilfried, like, you need to find a good watch factory. And then at some point, we're like, oh, but actually this doesn't exist. Like, you have the movement suppliers, the hand supplier, the pinion supplier, the buckle supplier, all those tiny components. You have a specific supplier for that, and many other things. So yeah, quite sort of, yeah, time consuming endeavor during that year. And I guess the time differences between Beijing and London also made it sometimes a little hard to coordinate. But no, we did it during that time. And I'm grateful for that, because I don't think after graduating, my parents would have allowed me to take a gap year. They would have been like, no, you need to work, find a job. Whereas in that case, I was like, you know what, just let me try that. If it doesn't work out, I'll find a job. But there's only going to be a gap of 2 months. You know, protos are there. I can launch in 2 months. So just like, yeah, give me 2 months to try to figure this thing out. if it doesn't work out, I'll find a job. But yeah, no,
Right.
the timing was quite nice.
So in 2018, on Kickstarter, you and Wilfred came out with the first series, the Atelier Wen Porcelain Odyssey. Is that correct?
Yes. Very, very correct. So we debuted with those two models, like Hao and Ji, which are actually different models, like same series but different models. Oops, sorry, I'm just gonna mute my
No
WhatsApp
problem.
because you'll have this sound for quite a while. Sorry for that. No, came with those two models, and the idea back then,
Yeah,
like
the
sort of,
inspiration, the inspiration.
yeah.
Obviously, I know you guys wanted to go for something Chinese, but why porcelain for your first watch, you know?
So to me, that was the way to achieve that sort of like modern Chinese design. So let me tell you what we wanted to do, because we were like, well, all right, so we have this brand concept. We're gonna be making those like proudly made Chinese watches and proudly designed in China as well. But then we were like, so what's gonna be the red thread of the design? And we thought, okay, like if we were to go back to the roots of contemporary Chinese watchmaking, which started in 1955, if we were to say that, you know what, let's say like things are starting all over again today, what would such a watch look like? And the funny thing is that like at the beginning in 1955, when in Tianjin, like they made like the very first like fully locally made like wristwatch, the Wuxing, the Wuxing.
The Wuxing, yeah, the Tianjin Wuxing. Yeah.
Yeah, they were actually like initially based on some. I don't remember the brand exactly. I think it was like maybe Simca, but yeah, some like British or French or Swiss watches. And then I feel like you saw that influence for still like quite a few years, but you had those elements which were like still like present in many of the local Chinese designs. So that's why there's also like a European feel and part in that design. If you look at the Hao, it's this kind of like chronometer dial layout, which I guess initially is a very European thing. If you look at the G, you have the chemin de fer, you have those applied indices, which are very like 1950s, you know, like half spheres, baton, and all that. But that's why initially you have this European component. Then as to why porcelain, for us, we felt like it's a really good way to instill that Chinese character, that Chinese dimension, because porcelain intrinsically, initially, that's a very Chinese craft. So we felt, okay, that's something which is very culturally relevant, but at the same time, we knew that it was something that watch aficionados would seek, because that's quite a desired features in watches, because it makes really nice dials. The way they play with light, the way they emit reflections is absolutely like unlike everything else. So we thought, you know, that's a very good way to both like sort of up the standard of the product, have something which is really in tune with watch aficionados, something that they will actually like and seek, and at the same time like reinforce the Chinese dimension. It's always hard, you know, like when we're like, okay, so what's a modern Chinese design for watches? But actually, there's no really any answer for that. So you also have to try to yeah, find it out by yourself. But that's a lot of like exploring and trialing and anyway. But that's why we use porcelain.
I think this is also evident with the name of the brand, Atelier Wen.
Yeah,
I don't think we've explained it just yet, but what does Atelier Wen mean?
yeah, because like very early on, so you know, we were like, okay, so we're gonna be doing like really good Chinese watches, proudly made in China, proudly designed in China. But then we're like, well, you know what? Actually, we're not Chinese, like, and we can't fake it. And we in this design, like, we found a reason for it, but still it came that there was a European side to it, a very Chinese side, but a very European side as well. I would say the Chinese side is stronger, but there's still like this sort of like European prism. And the reason behind that is that, well, at the onset, we're two French guys, we're not two Chinese guys. So we felt that the name of the brand would need to reflect the nature of the brand as well. So you have like a French word, atelier. So an atelier is a workshop, and it's often used in luxury brands name. It's often atelier something or maison something. And then Wen, which is like a Wenhua, so culture, because that idea was to explore Chinese cultures through watches and make it accessible and relevant to the highest number of people possible across the world. But that's the Atelier Wen.
Yeah. Which is why I
Bracelet. Yeah.
very Johnny, you think so too, right?
Yeah, like Atelier is very French and Wen is very Chinese. So
like Chinese, 中文.
Yeah.
Which is great. So Robin, after the Hao and the Ji, first two models, and I understand that throughout the months, and then you came out with another 3 colors.
Yeah. So actually, it was not that smooth, if I were to be honest. So we launched on Kickstarter, and actually the Kickstarter was very much in line with, I mean, it was beyond our hopes and expectations. We were happy with that. And what happened is that, like, Wilfried had already moved to Hong Kong, but I moved to Hong Kong as well. And we didn't open an office, but we were in a co-working space. But basically, we were working there. We had interns and everything. We were already thinking about next series, not yet Perception, but still like next series. And we were selling like quite a few. So business was not bad. And then at some point, we're like, you know what? Let's launch in mainland China, because why wouldn't it work there? Like the product, like, even though it's not like, I mean, in its identity, it's not just Chinese, it's Chinese and French, but still like has a strong Chinese component. And we felt like local Chinese people were more and more looking for domestically made goods, and you had this sort of growing term of them like appreciating more and more like local products, which we thought was great. And we believe like, well, then maybe they may like our watches. However, I don't think we had the right marketing strategy there. We didn't have as well like the right amount of capital. So we tried to launch, but it ended up being like a rather like unprofitable sort of part of the venture to launch in mainland China. Because I don't think our marketing was right. I don't think our distribution was right. I mean, so many wrongs we did.
But this is all part of the experience, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that, you know, that there was no precedent for that. Like when we launched on Kickstarter, like it was very, I wouldn't say it was easy, but I had like benchmark like so many projects we did well. Then I had contacted the brand owners and I chatted with them. I was like asking for advice. How did you do this? How did you do that? And that really helped us to fine tune and make the campaign better. But for that, we were like, yeah, like no one has really done something like that. So there was no yardstick. And we went with an approach which actually may not have been the most suited, because basically we tried to replicate what we did in the West in mainland China. So like relying heavily on media, doing a bit of influences, doing those things. But then like what we found out is that sort of like the cost of visibility is much stronger, like per impression in mainland China, and the conversion rates are much lower. So basically you need to be much more visible, and it's gonna cost you quite a lot more of money. And we didn't have that money then. We thought like we'd have enough, but no, because we completely underestimated those like cost of visibility and sort of conversion rates. Also, we had no idea that like sort of like physical retail presence could be essential, especially when you had like no brand equity whatsoever. I mean, think about it, we're just like two random guys doing those watches and made just a few hundred of them. Like you can't say you have brand equity to most people. You're absolutely unknown. So we completely missed those things. Good learning experience though, but then what happened is that like we were kind of tight business-wise. So we had to pay our suppliers. We could pay the suppliers, but that was pretty much it. the rest we had to put a big pause on that, put a big pause on the second series, put a big pause on everything. Wilfried went to Singapore, I went back to France, and for a while we didn't have anything new. And then when we are like slowly emerging, because we're still like doing sales a bit slowly, we're able to spare a bit of cash on the side. And then we're like, you know what? We still have quite some cases. We have dial blanks. Why don't we try to do something with them instead of having them sit? And we thought about the special editions. You have 3 of them. You have the green, which we started with, the red, which was second, and eventually the purple. It's funny because in the development of those, the red was actually the very first one that came out. And how it came out is 2 things. I don't know if you've checked on our Instagram, but one day I posted like a picture of a HoH, which was red, which was just like an actual picture of a HoH, but that I photoshopped so that the numbers would look red. And I posted it just not thinking much about that. And actually, like, I think it was like for quite some time, the picture that performed the best on Instagram, like receiving like lots of engagement, a lot of comments, people asking for it. So one day I came to Wilfried and I was like, look, like, just posted this, and people are really, really wanting it. So we're like, oh, okay, why not? Maybe there could be demand for that. And then the second reason we did it is like, the guys at Monochrome, you know, the magazine, they had been helping us quite a bit. They wrote articles about us. And I was in touch with Xavier Markel, and Xavier Markel was like, guys, you were like not financially very well, like you need to sort of go back on track. You have cases, you have blanks, dial blank stories, you have hands. Why don't you just do like some color variations, and it can be fun, you know, you can explore different things, you take little risks because you don't make that many, and so on and so forth. So the 2 of those like combined, that sort of convinced us to launch those color variations. We tried a lot. We tried so many colors. We tried orange, yellow, gray. Most of them were quite horrible, like especially like orange and gray. Like you wouldn't believe it, but it looks absolutely ugly. Eventually, we were convinced by those 3. I don't know why we started with green. In hindsight, maybe we saw that
it is a popular color though. It is a popular color.
Yeah. No, but actually thinking about it, I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I don't think I have a favorite. But it was quite nice. It was kind of smooth, you know, like it was visible and present, but it has a sort of tranquility, serenity than the regular HoH does not have. Or at least not as much. So no, it was not bad. But why we started with green, that's a good question. To me, I felt we thought the red would really be like the main ones. We're like, let's start with first another one, then we have the main one, and then we have the bold bet, which was purple. Purple, I regret not having done more, because that's the one we did the least of. But I feel it's like that's quite a nice purple in honesty, in full honesty with you. It's not like too bright, it's not too flashy, but at the same time it's not blue. I felt it's really like the right balance, and with the blue hands it had a bit like of dynamism to that dial, so that's really cool. It's the only one for which we made like salmon leather strap in a dedicated color. For the others we just used a regular strap and had it in whatever like dial color it was. So this one, yeah, a bit more work went into it, but I feel it's very nice. The people who bought one, I don't even have one myself, sadly.
Do you have any of your own watches, Robin?
I just have a HoH and a G. That's it.
HoH and
you know,
G. Okay.
Green I don't have, the red I don't have, the purple I don't have. And the funny thing is, I've never seen a green, a red, or a purple. Like,
oh, right.
Yeah,
you designed it, but you never touched it before.
No, that's the thing. It's like Wilfried saw them because he was like physically closer to the manufacturers we were working for. But then we made so few of them that we were like, no, we're not gonna like keep one for ourselves. I mean, imagine like if we have to keep one for ourselves, it's like 6 watches less. When you produce that little, it's not really reasonable or fair. So no, I've never seen them, but like all the people who had the purple were extremely happy. I was also quite pleased with how they look like in pictures. So yeah.
But from what I heard,
for me, if anyone is selling one, I may consider.
I'll let you know. But Robin, I mean, the good news is, or the bad news is, the Hao and the Ji, they completely sold out.
Yeah,
they completely sold out.
Yeah, no, right? that was quite a surprise, you know. I think, yeah, I told you we wanted to do porcelain for the sort of cultural aspect, but also because we felt it would add value. Because when we're at the planning stage, we were like, who is going to spend this much on, even though it's a really good watch, a Chinese watch, we felt that people were so biased against it that the money we were asking for was really high and it would be a really tough sell. We knew the product was worth it. Like, I mean, there was a cost to manufacture it, but besides that, beyond that, the specs we put into, we really did our best. Like we really tried to not cut any corner. But still, we were like, who is going to buy that? Like, we thought like we would just sell like, I mean, less than actually the production. Like, so we were very, very surprised when they sold out, especially because, you know, we were like dubious about the viability, like the commercial viability, even at Kickstarter price. We're like, who is going to spend $500 on that? Like, because to us, like the sort of yardstick of premium Chinese watches were those Seagull watches, but you can get like an automatic like Seagull watch for like 1,200 RMB. This was way more expensive, and we thought like, yeah, people are just going to say it's too expensive. Like they are going to compare us with like Seagull or like Shanghai watches or Beijing watches, which are all cheaper. At least people who buy Chinese watches. So yeah, so when it was sold out, we were really like surprised, really happy as well. The Hao was the first one to sell out. Then the split as to the others, I don't think I remember it. I think it was something like green, purple, G, red, maybe something like that. But don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. I remember the last watch we sold it to someone in Mongolia.
Mongolia.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's the first person we're selling to Mongolia. But that was the very, very last one. Then no more. But yeah, no, that was a really good surprise. But then we were like, shit, you know, we don't have any more watches to sell. We're not gonna make any more of those because it's limited edition. So well, it's limited, it's done. And then like perception is 0% ready. Like I mean, yeah, the case and the bracelet were somewhat okay-ish, even though there was a lot of work.
Yeah,
but
sorry, Robin.
was there.
Speaking of perception, so 2 years after your launch on Kickstarter, and then obviously because I've been following on your journals, right, on Atelier Wen.
Yeah.
So this is the first time on December 22nd, 2020, you told us that you guys were releasing your second series, which is the Atelier Wen Perception.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that in December, like 2020, we had already been working on it for a long time.
Already, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we showed then only some drawings, but we had been working on it for quite some time. There you go. So the things that were really ready by then is the case and the bracelet. Dials, I think after we also showed some dial like drawings and renders, but they evolved a lot. The whole idea with perception, I mean, there were a lot of ideas, but mainly there was one thing which is that, you know, like Porcelain Odyssey, that was a great watch, but still because we had this idea that no one would ever want to buy like that level of Chinese watches. We try to be extremely cost conscious. So I'm not saying we were cutting corners or anything, like not at all, but we really tried to be budget conscious. So in all the manufacturing choices we did, of course, we did the best for the budget we had, but we didn't go like to the full extent we could have gone, which would have like shoot the price of the watch to a higher real. But with perception, we are like, okay, like, so we have this brand mission that we want to celebrate Chinese culture. We want to introduce people to it. We want people to experience it through our watches. We want people to see that Chinese craftsmanship can be really great, that it can be creative, that it's not just this stupid idea that made in China is bad. We want to show them that it can be really good, that it can be actually even better than Swiss made, than German made, than whatever. So we thought for that, we need to go higher, and we need to have maybe a bit less boundaries in the product we design. We need to be less constrained and really be able to, you know, if we want to do something, let's do it the best way possible and not just like the way the budget allows.
So wait,
so
let me just stop you there, Robin. So
yeah.
the first time when I showed the sketch on the right hand side to Johnny, yeah, because Johnny is actually a designer himself.
Okay.
Okay. So wow. Johnny, so what did you say when you first saw the sketch of the bracelet? Johnny, you said that.
Actually, I was quite surprised because Robin said that they are not a designer, but I can see there are many architectural details on the cases or bracelets. Yeah, and I think that when I first saw it, I can feel the very oriental feeling inside the watch, and it's really like it looks really like a rooftop for me when I saw the
like
angles,
the forbidden city, yeah.
Yeah, you guys did a really good job, I think.
Well, thank you so much, Johnny. That was really the sort of like design red thread was Chinese architecture. And we really try to think about like, how can we integrate that into the watch. So indeed, like the case sides, like that was inspired by the shape of the pagoda roof. The bracelet, you have this like it's not really an octagon, but kind of like reshaped octagon shape, which like is repeated all through it, and which you also find in traditional buildings. If you have a look at the lugs, it's not flat actually. You have this kind of like roof shaped little slope. On the actual watch, it's a bit harder to see, but when there's light, you really see it, and it's quite funny because light really goes like two ways, and it's quite nice. So yeah, the case was the case and bracelets were really inspired by that. Yeah, that was the
right.
The
and for this one, Robin.
This one is where like I feel the inspiration was maybe the best interpreted, because on the case and bracelet is rather direct. You know, it's like we looked at the shape of one thing and then we just replicated on the watch directly. But this is actually quite cool, because then we were like, okay, so how can we really get inspired by Chinese architecture? And we found out that like back in the days, like in ancient times, you had this building principle called Sunmao, which is basically like mortise and tenon, and it's about like stacking elements on top of each other and making them stick without the use of any nails. And we were like, well, actually, you know, that's something we could replicate on our watch and build it the same way. And the dial actually is done like that. So the dial, you have like 4 levels of heights. At the beginning, you have 1 plate, and then you have 2 plates, which are like put on top of it. And then in those 2 plates, you have cutouts, and indexes are like neatly nesting into those cutouts. And then in the indexes, you had like little gaps, which you can see here. And there's an elevated ring, which comes like also nesting in the indexes. So to me, that's where the architecture inspiration is sort of like the most developed. and it's actually quite cool because it really gives you like a sense of depth, a sense of relief. When you look at the watch, you feel like, oh, actually this thing is quite high, it's quite deep. So no, it's quite nice. Like so you have both like let's say, okay, we got inspired by it, and that's a reinterpretation of the architectural principle to the watch. But also I feel, you know, it's not just done for the sake of doing it. It also really adds something to the dial, in the sense that then this dial looks like it has really a lot of depth, which is cool. I mean, because when you look at it, it's absolutely like mesmerizing, and it's not like flat and dull.
On towards the next slide, we have the, we really want to comment on this image, is because when we first saw the rendering,
yeah,
like, I honestly have to say I was speechless, because I was so impressed with the overall, like, because for those that know me, I have the Hao and the Ji, right? I really think it's a beautiful watch. For the price and everything, you guys executed really well. But just judging from this rendering, I've highlighted a few spots that I really want to talk about. Yeah, the chamfering on the bracelet. That is crazy, man. It's these kind of attention to details that really speaks to me, you know, because sometimes for me, it's not really the matter of the pricing of the watch, but, you know, like understanding your story and where you guys are coming from, what you guys have been able to achieve, and producing this kind of quality of work. It makes me proud, you know, even though I'm a part of the company, but it's like, it's a beautiful watch.
Thanks a lot. And just if I may add on the chamfering, like there's something which is really nice, which is that if you look at the bracelet itself, the gap between the links is actually quite tight. So when you wear it, you have the feeling that it's like, you know, just one piece of metal, and then you have this chamfering with kind of like make a kind of very dynamic link to the case. I'm not sure if I'm explaining properly, but yeah, the bracelet, you just see like one continuous piece of metal, and then you have those two chamferings on the side, which directly lead you to the case in a very dynamic way. And then the case is all about like different angles, different surface finishes. It's very sharp, it's very dynamic, but I feel like this really like complements the case, and it gives quite a nice like visual feeling.
I think there was one point, Johnny, do you remember you said that when you saw this image of the links of the bracelet, it reminded you of something?
Yeah, it reminds me the armor of the soldier, because it looks very tough, and yeah, the details are very sharp, so it reminds me
I think it's the terracotta warriors in CN.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how the armor is really tight fit, and it's you know, it does present a very nicely finished bracelet.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Johnny, for the observation. Actually, that's not something I had thought about, but yeah, that's quite a cool thing to say. No, that's nice. Thank you.
And then after that, you guys obviously did some more 3D renderings through your journals.
Yes.
You know, and this is the first time we actually saw a glimpse of the Caseback and a bit of the bracelet as well, some of the teas.
Yeah. So the Caseback, if I may add, I'm absolutely not a fan of display Caseback. And on the Porcelain Odyssey, I mean, you know it, like Justin, there's no display Caseback, it's a solid Caseback. So I wanted at the beginning to do also like a full solid Caseback here, but then people were like, no, we want to see the movement. I was telling them, you know, like, yeah, it's a nice movement, but it's not like AHCI, like handmade, like it's not Philippe Dufour, like let's do something solid. They were like, no, we really want to see it, even if for you it's normal, we want to see it. So I was like, okay, you know what, let's go halfway. I'll do this like semi-display Caseback, so you still have like this very like 3D deep shape, and at the same time you have a smooth window which is centered on the escapement and the balance wheel. So sort of the
but Robin, can I just say something? Even though you mentioned that in the Porcelain Odyssey there was no open caseback, yeah, that is not a concern, because when I actually flipped the watch over, they were like,
yeah,
wow, this is really good work. You know, some of them actually preferred the back compared to the front.
Wow, really? Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, like, so, you know, for me, it's such a big compliment, because you know the efforts I went through to getting the watch. You know, I didn't pay a lot of like big money, but the amount of compliments I received it. I told you last time I wore the How to only watch. Obviously, only watch. You know, there's the piece unique, but there was like 5 people asking me. It's like, yo, what is that watch? You know, and I'm like, yeah. So sometimes for me, is more expensive does not mean that it is better. It really doesn't. So it doesn't have to be Philip IV. It really doesn't. You know, sometimes is if you really do appreciate timepieces, if you know it's good, it's good. And I can tell you, Robin, this is good.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot, Justin.
All right.
Thanks.
So after the 3D rendering, I think the first draft of the perception was these 3.
Yes.
From I know after that there were some changes. What do you guys change for this one?
So we mainly changed, like, let's say 3 things. The 2 biggest one are the date window and the Guilloche patterns. So the date window, initially, like that's something actually which came very early on. Like the designers, they suggested it, and we're like, yeah, you know what, like date window at 7, no one is doing it. This kind of like vertical kind of canvas was really cool.
I like it. I like it. I like it though. I like it.
I mean, me too. I liked it. But then the issue was like alignment with the markers. We tried really hard. We made a lot of attempts, but it was impossible to properly align the window with the markers. It was always off. And then we thought, like, it cannot be off, you know, like it's either you do it perfectly and then it's kind of cool because you have this kind of like symmetry, and even though the way it's placed, like it's not like central, so it should be like maybe less symmetric, but because it's really well done, it sort of like balances the rest. But if you can't do that, then it's gonna be a mess, and we couldn't. So that's one of the reasons why we stopped. Like, second reason why we stopped, like we talked to people who were doing guilloche, and they were like, basically the more things you put on your dial, the sort of like more you will disrupt the guilloche pattern and the sort of like depth effect you're trying. So for them, it was like the less the better, the way you can really let the pattern like speak for itself and do its job, do its magic. So
less is more. Less is more.
Maybe that's a blessing in disguise, you know, that we couldn't do it. What else changed? The guilloche pattern. This one was, gonna be honest with you, it's an extremely complex pattern because it's a combination of 2 patterns. So you have like the first level where you see like those kind of circles, like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, towards like the out of the dials. And in each of them, you have like kind of like sub patterns. The guilloche master Cheng, he was like, that's really hard, and that is not something I can do. So like, okay, let's change to something else. And one tiny thing which also changed is like, if you have a look at how the watch are colored, you have like the guilloche bit, which is either gray, blue, or salmon, and then you have the outer bit, which in those renders were left gray. What we decided to do instead was to color the outer bit in a shade of the guilloche color, which is a little bit darker, but just like not too dark. So the gray one is still gray. The blue one is some kind of dark blue, and the salmon is some kind of like dark pink, dark.
Perfect.
Hey, Robert, I remember that I saw that some of your sketches, and I think you have the button shape or some like squash shaped hands before, and then you now change to leaf shape. right?
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. So those initial hands, which honestly were very Nautilus-y. But never really a fan of them. I think they were mainly put there as placeholders because initially we didn't really think much of the hand.
The brainstorming stage.
On the dials, but we knew we would change them. The reason why we went for leaf hands is that like when we were designing this watch, we were like, it can't just be like you want to build a brand, so there needs to be some design continuity. And it can't just be like releasing a model and then another model. It needs to be like a brand. So we're like, okay, so we have those like Porcelain Odyssey pieces. What elements can we take from there that we can like apply to the new series? Like, how can we sort of like start building a design language? And we're like, okay, well, leaf can fit perception. So we made like larger leaf hands, loom leaf hands. They are more 3D, they are more beefy, they are more dynamic. But that's the reason why we went for leaf hands to start building this sort of consistency. Likewise, that's also why you have this HoH pattern, which is slightly different from the one we used in the G. The one in the G is more complex. But here, like too much complexity would have been a little overwhelming, especially with the Guilloche, which already is taking a lot of visual space. So this one has been simplified, but still, like we wanted to go for this pattern because it was one of the signature feature of the Porcelain Odyssey series.
Right. And Robin, speaking of design language, let's go back to the Caseback. So for the first series, I've highlighted in red. You guys have the Kun Peng, right? Which is, if I'm incorrect, it's the half bird and half fish.
Yes.
Right. So for the next one, you guys have
that's this kind of like guarding stone lion, which you may find at the entrance.
HSBC, the bank.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe to touch this one as well, like you bring you good luck and you. Yeah. But once I went to see those lions, and I was like, oh yeah, people are really like touching them like for good luck. So I was a bit like first time I came to Hong Kong, I was a bit surprised. I mean, I was very young, but anyway, why we went for this one is well because that was in tune with the architectural theme. Sorry. So we wanted to, I mean, I told you at the beginning, I just wanted like a solid Caseback because I felt also that's one of the signature feature. In the end, people were asking for display, so went for semi-display, but still had this very like deeply embossed bit. And the lion is because, that's very much in tune with the architectural theme. You find those at the entrance of all those ancient and important buildings. So I was like, that's quite fitting. We had the designers like redraw one. The strokes they use, I'm not sure the one I sent you is actually the most final one. We made so many like sketches.
The one that's final right here.
Is
that correct? The final one?
Yeah, this one is the final one. But if you notice, like what's quite cool, which I haven't really talked about, is like the strokes the designers use are kind of like cloudy, as if like the lion is made of clouds. You see it particularly well if you look like around the top.
The eyebrows. The eyebrows, right?
And I thought, well, that's quite cool. So and then we just like deeply embossed it. So
but Robin, I think you guys actually did a good job. Like, I don't know, Johnny, if you agree with me. I actually do like the open Caseback on the bottom. I think it's very smart. It's because you guys are showing the area that's polished.
Smiley face and
so it even though there's not like as I said, like Philippe Dufour level things to see, but I think it's attractive. It's attractive, especially I was talking to Johnny about it, that you guys even did the pelage on the main plate.
Yeah.
So that's really well done.
Thank you.
And of course, on the next picture on the right, that's the rotor, right? That's the rotor.
Yeah. The rotor, which is left like without engraving. There were two reasons for that. The first one is actually the movement we use is extremely thin. So the rotor material is not like your traditional rotor. It's made of tungsten. because like it needs to be heavier to properly win the watch. And tungsten is much harder to engrave. So the movement supplier was like, it's a bit of a pain if you ask us to engrave, because it means we need to sort of like modify before we make your movement the kind of settings we have to make the rotor. And but they were not a huge fan of that, and we're like, fair enough. But as well, I felt it was, you know, fitting with the overall like more like sportier theme of the watch. Like it kind of gives you a sort of like slick slash stealth look in that, you know. It's sporty, it's cool, but it's not too much, it's not maximalist. So yeah.
So tungsten, right? The rotor is tungsten.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Very, very good. All right, and moving on to one of my favorites, we have Master Cheng over here. Can you tell us a little bit of Master?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's really, to me, like the key part of perception is that the dial are handmade guilloche using a rosin giant by Master Cheng. So Master Cheng is basically the only guilloche master in China. Based on my research, is as well the only one in the whole of Asia. I mean, to give you a rough idea, there's no official figures, but my estimate is that there's no more than 30 people in the whole world who can do like handmade guilloche. It's extremely complex. I mean, it looks simple because you're like, yeah, you just need to use the rosin giant, but actually using the rosin giant is extremely complex because there's an issue of timing, you know. You need to like switch between the different rosettes, you need to apply different pressures, different speed, and you need to stay extremely focused, like engraving a tiny piece of metal for hours. So it's really a complex craft, and Master Cheng is the only such master doing that in China. It's quite funny because Master Cheng had a different life before doing guilloche. He had a job in Beijing, a regular job, a family, everything. And then one day he was shown an old Russian cigarette box, which was guilloche. And he completely fell in love with it. And he thought, well, you know, I can do it. And he left everything to try doing guilloche. So he left Beijing and went to live in the countryside. He put his atelier in a cave because he wanted absolutely no vibrations. And then he tried to build his own rosin giant. Because the thing about rosin giant is that they're not made anymore. Like I mean, okay, there's one guy in the US who now makes some, but besides this guy, like there's not really any makers of rosin giant. And there are not a lot of them. So it's very hard to get like a hand of one. So he had to build his, and he had no plans whatsoever. So he actually built a few, and the first ones were not working really well. And then like finally, as time went by, he had like two, which works well. And he also learned completely by himself how to do like guilloche. So for a few years, actually, it was really tough for him because he didn't know how, and he had to learn.
Sorry, Robert, let me stop you there. So the rose engine that you're speaking of, he built it himself?
Yeah, completely. He even has a patent for that.
Oh. Okay, so okay, first of all, that's really crazy. The second thing is he's self-taught?
Self-learning.
Yeah, because there's no one to teach you how to do that. I mean, unless you speak French and you go do an apprenticeship at like Métallet, which is the dial supplier of Breguet, or Comblemine, which is like the one of Carrie Woutilainen, where they do have like comparatively a large number of like guilloche there. But besides that, no one will teach you that. There are just too few people doing it. And especially like someone in China, like where there's no history of doing guilloche, where there's no sort of like precedent knowledge of that. So no, he completely learned by himself. And it took him years. So that's, I don't know, to me, it's really cool. Like this.
I think so too. And another thing that Johnny pointed out, Johnny, we talked about this the other day. On the fourth picture, you can see the gold colored dial.
Yeah.
Johnny was saying like, actually, that's a really nice colored dial.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, very
but from
that one.
Well, you know, then like who knows, like maybe we should like release a gold variation a bit later. I mean, the plan would be like to release some new color variation, like not
Right.
not right now, but afterwards. So maybe gold could be one. Actually, when we first received like the first dial protos, we also thought, well, that's a nice color, very warm, but like not as strong as Salmon, you know, like so we thought, hey, that's quite cool. So who knows?
And
Maybe that's.
and I think Robin, you're referring to these pictures, yeah? Because I'm sure by the time when this video is launched, the pictures will be shown as well, yeah. But here we have the three colors. Is the first one gray or is the first one blue?
No, the first one is actually an earlier attempt at doing blue, so not the right blue.
Okay.
The second one is still not exactly the right blue. We made so many attempts. Like blue was really hard because we really wanted a kind of like ice glacier blue, which is not a standard color. So how it works with color, like initially, they were like, I mean, we have one supplier that is in charge of finishing the dial. Like Cheng, the only thing he does is Guilloche. Then he sends like the Guilloche blanks to another company which is in charge of doing like the plating. And they had like a bunch of color, and we were like, no, we don't want any of those colors. The one we want are that and that, and we gave them Pantone. For the gray, it was rather easy, that they could do without any issues. Salmon, it proved a little bit of tweaking. But it was okay. Blue, however, was really hard. They had really hard time to come up with that kind of like ice color, because it was often like grayish blue or greenish blue when they're trying to make it icy. So we made so many attempts. Eventually, I think the one we have now is really close to what we had in mind. Is a little bit different.
But I think is in the next slide. Would these be the one that's relatively similar to the final ones?
No, this is like what you see like assembled would really be it. So yeah, those are the free ones. But actually, doing the plating is hard. And to be fair with you, it took us a really long time to figure out, because it's like we had no idea what level of thickness the plating would need to be. So you had the issue of figuring out the color, but then you have the issue of like what thickness you want, because you want to give a certain texture, you know, like if you look at the raw guilloche on the raw metal, it has a raw texture because it's raw and treated metal, but then you want it to have a texture which is like not too coarse, but not too glossy either. And that will be highly dependent on the thickness of the plating. And we didn't know. And the thing is that the dial Finnish guys, they also had no idea because they had never worked with guilloche. And there's like so few guilloche dials out there, I mean, real ones, that no one knew. And it took us a really long time. And eventually, I mean, I must thank him. It's one of the watchmakers of Philips. Because I asked a friend of mine at Philips, I was like, do you know anyone who would know? I thought like they see a lot of very vintage pieces, a lot of very high-end pieces, and he put me in touch with his watchmaker, and the watchmaker was like, it needs to be this level of height. And actually, what I didn't know is that after you plate, you need to put some kind of like polish coat on that. And then I was like, oh shit, I didn't know. So then I told like the dial Finnish guy, and eventually we were able to finish the dials and have the right texture. But that took a really long time to figure out. And initially, Johnny, I never sent you the picture because like I think it would have maybe like alarmed you a little bit. But like the first color attempts they did, it was really bad. Like absolutely horrible. So it was a really long journey to get
long journey for that. But yeah. one thing that I have to mention to everyone is the level of attention Atelier Wen really brings. Because in the next image, even though we actually don't see it, because I'm sure this is the one that's closed, right? It's closed.
Yeah, it's closed. Yeah.
But you guys actually did pelage for the back plate as well.
Yeah. Why not? We thought like, you know, we say we want to do like the best Chinese watch possible, so let's really be true to that, and let's not leave any details, because at the end of the day, to me at least, watches is all about a collection of details. So yeah, you don't see it, but at least it's well done. It's very clean. It's very neat, and the watchmaker who will open your watch will maybe appreciate it and will be like, oh, that's quite nicely finished.
And one thing I think we haven't mentioned it is, instead of using 316L steel, you guys have actually upgraded 904L.
Reason why is that like 904L like polishes better than 316L, and we were like, okay, part of the appeal of perception is that case, which has a lot of angles, a lot of different surfaces, and where we will want to play like contrasting finishes, and for that, you know, you have like very brushed surfaces, very polished one, and we wanted the polish to be especially like strong, and 904L was quite good for that, and that really allows us to have this like highly dynamic, highly sharp, highly contrasting kind of like surface finish, which really brings out the K shape, and is a joy on the wrist. So that's why. Is.
Speaking of joy on the wrist, we also have the rubber straps. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the protos, you know, are extremely large. I think we messed up the dimensions. It happens. So actually, like the regular ones will be shorter. I mean, what will happen is that, like, I don't know if you were aware, but for Porcelain Odyssey, we had like two dial like dimensions. We had like regular and small. In this case, we may be doing 3, so they will be large. The ones you see there, they will be regular and they will be small. But no, those rubber straps are quite cool. They are made of FKM rubber. Beforehand, I never really had any rubber straps. So to be fully fair with you, I didn't know why people were such fans of them. When I received the protos, I was like, okay, now I can see why. It's just like unbelievably smooth. I don't know. It's so nice. Like, it's something, you know, you want to hold it, you want to touch it all the time. It's really smooth. It's really flexible. But at the same time, it feels well done and premium. I don't know how to put it better, but it's quite cool. And we went for FKM, so the sort of like flexibility should remain even when it's really cold or really hot. So it doesn't attract dust. It doesn't get dirty easily. No, it's really nice. The integration with the case is honestly quite well done. Like, it's very smoothly done. So yeah.
Do we need any tools to change it, Robin? Or
no. It's quick release. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. It is. It's quick release, so you can easily change it. And that being said as well, the metal strap is also quick release, so you can like swap from like the metal, the rubber, like very easily. And something that people do not know is that it looks like it's an integrated watch. The truth is that it's not an integrated watch. So the lugs, actually, you can put any strap on them. You'll have this kind of hood that you see there, but you can put any 18mm straps on that. The fit won't be as good as with our strap, because the shape we need to do is not.
You gotta cut out. Yeah,
you have that, and then it's like that, and then like kind of gets a bit wider, and then it tapers. So if you use like a sort of like other strap, like you won't have the shape made for that, so it won't be as fitting as those. But historically, you can put like whatever strap you want to put on that. So you're not like stuck with us in a way. You can really like put anything you want to put. That was one of the reasons. And just to say a word about the buckle. I feel it's not bad as well. It's quite hard to do, especially how you have the one which is nesting into this like outer circle. I mean, it's quite. It looks huge here because it's a close-up. When you wear the watch, it's not that huge. So no, it was quite painstaking to really have the one like fit well in that.
So Robin, for now, the final 3 colors version would be the silver, the salmon, and the blue, and this is fitted on the metal bracelet. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So that's how it will be sold, like sold on the metal bracelet as default. And yeah, it's those. One thing to note as well is that the silver dial, sorry, it has heat blue hands, which the two others do not have. Adds a bit more contrast, and it's quite nice. I mean, fits well.
And the blue hands, they are heat treated, yeah, they're not
Yeah.
colored or
No,
anything.
no, they are not chemically plated or whatever. They are heat treated. They are quite nice. Also worth noting with the hands, maybe a bit hard to see in the picture, is that they are hand bent. The second hand and the minute hand, so it adds a bit more volume and a bit more like freeness to the thing, which is quite nice.
Very good. So following on, we have some more of the lifestyle pics of the watch.
Yeah, I have to say, those are quite shitty pictures I took the day I went to pick them up from my watchmaker. I was quite excited, so I didn't really mind the lighting or the quality of the picture. But yeah, I mean, man, I was extremely excited.
But Robin, that's the crazy thing. Yeah. You mentioned that they're shitty pictures, but Johnny, let's just talk about the image. Let's talk about the dial. It plays with you. The lighting plays with you. Just talking about the picture on the left and the picture on the right, it's really like two different shades of blue.
Yeah, that's the thing. And if you put it like direct sunlight, it's completely different. Like, you know, I feel it's a bit like porcelain. Like it also, like the way it like emits light it's really interesting. And here it's I mean, differently, of course, but it's the same. Like, you go direct sunlight, it will have a kind of depth, which is not the same depth of when you have like regular light, which is not the same depth as when you are inside and have just like artificial light. It's really cool. And the blue, it will vary from something which is extremely light to something which can be like almost like gray and dark. That's quite incredible. So no, it's really fun to wear it. Like it's not boring.
And this one here, we have another image of the salmon color, which honestly I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. So Salmon has actually been growing on me. Like beforehand, it was the one I liked the least. I've been wearing it for the past few days. I don't know. It's a bit more fun than blue and gray. It's a bit more out there, but it's not too much out there. The right balance of like visibility, a bit like the HoH purple we did. So I quite like it, and I feel like the salmon shade, it really let the Guilloche pattern like speaks for itself and show its depth. So salmon is quite nice. On metal, I feel it's better than on rubber. Even though I've been wearing it on rubber, but no, it's quite nice.
And then the image on the top right, you can see with the red box, that is the quick release system. Is that correct?
Yeah. And those ones are really easy to use. The shape, I feel it's easier to use than like the rounded ones. That's why we went for the shape. Yeah.
And I think one thing we forgot to mention, actually you did just now, is let's just look at the profile. How thin the watch is.
Yeah.
How thin is it?
It's 9.4 millimeters, so that's quite thin. And then we worked out the profile so that it actually feels thinner. I mean, if you look at that peak on top, you see that you have like the case main body, which is separate from the case back, which is separate from the bezel. And we did that so that like the only thing that would sort of like stand out is the case main body, and it would actually feel thinner on your wrist. If you look at like the second peak, the one where I'm wearing it like on the side, it looks really thin. It feels extremely thin, and it's actually quite thin, and that's cool. I mean, yeah, I really wanted that thinness. That's not something I had before, and to be fair, it's just like it's comfortable. It looks cool. It looks sleek. It's really nice. Yeah. So I think there'll still be like a bit like post-process, like they're almost there, but there are like a few things to modify on those pictures, but roughly speaking, yeah, those are the somewhat official pictures. Those are sold out shots. So sold out shots, you know, it's never that appealing. It's not the most sexy angle to view the watch at. But yeah, that way you can get sort of like a rough and clear idea of what it looks like. Yeah.
But I think just from judging from the photos over here, I think the Guilloche is very well presented. Everything is in proportion. I love the leaf hands. How about you, Johnny? What do you think?
Yeah, personally, I like the blue one, but I also like the salmon personally because I think it's more like Oriental, because usually we mention Chinese or China, we use red, but salmon it would be like another alternative to make you feel more like the Oriental style. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, they all three really nice colors, but I don't know. For me, I've always had something for the gray.
Okay. You're one of the very few person like who seem to like the gray most. I feel like, I don't know, most people I've talked to, it's either the salmon or the blue. In France, at least around me in Paris, like, people tend to go more for the blue. Then based on what we've discussed, like just seen, like it seems like in Hong Kong, a lot of people like the salmon better. But gray, I don't know, seems to be a bit in the middle. So I'm glad you're liking it. Honestly, with you, it's really great. Like the heat blue hands. I mean, having worn it a few times, the heat blue hands really adds something to the dial, which is quite cool. So yeah, and it's a very dynamic gray. You know, like at some point it can look almost bronze. But then it can be like also very cold and icy gray, like a very silver. So it also plays a lot with light. That's quite a dynamic dial, which is cool.
So Robert, which one is your favorite so far again?
So far it's the blue, but then I like blue dials. I know I'm a very boring person, but I do like blue dials. So it's the blue, and this shade of blue, you know, it's like, it's icy, but I think now like quite a few brands are doing like ice dials. If you look at the recent like Chapek Antarctic, very nice ice blue dials, some recent APs, but this blue is a bit different. Like it's icy, but not the same kind of ice. So I do like it because I haven't seen many dials which are using this shade. So yeah, and it also plays with light extremely well. It changes a lot. It's also a color which really lets the Guilloche pattern speak for itself. Maybe not as much as salmon, but still quite a bit. So no, the blue one is my favorite so far. But then, to be fair, like my opinions tend to change. So if you ask me again in 1 week, maybe I'll tell you that silver is definitely the best. And then in an extra week, I'll be like, no, you need to get salmon, like it's a no-brainer. So, but so far it's blue.
For this time, for the perception, you guys have opted to use the 904 stainless steel. It's because you guys did mention you guys wanted to have a better polishing, and this happens to be a better choice, which I also think is the smart way to do it, especially with today's market, with so many different brands going into sport watches. You know, upgrading your material would definitely put you guys one step ahead. Right? Yeah. And as a perfect fit is a 40 diameter, excluding the crown. The thickness is also very thin. I should say the thinness is because it's only 9.4 And this is one thing that my friends have asked. They did hear about a 2-layer of anti-reflective coating. But I think you mentioned for you guys, there's 5 layers. Is that, am I,
Yeah, 5 layers. So basically, like inside the crystal, you just like coat 5 times using the anti-reflective product. That's also what we did with the Porcelain Odyssey. And we were quite satisfied with the anti-reflectiveness quality of the bit. You can put more than 5, but then like it doesn't really add much. I feel it's very much 80-20. But yes, so 5 is good. If we get too much feedbacks that reflections are bad, then we may like add more. But to be fair with you, having worn them like continuously for the past 2 weeks already, damn. It's quite nice. Like you have very little reflections, and therefore you can really see the guilloche pattern. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy to take in pictures, because those kind of like guilloche is a bit hard the way it plays with light, but in terms of like no reflections, it's quite good. Yeah.
Right. And in terms of the dial, we mentioned just now, Master Cheng, he is the only handmade guilloche master.
Yeah.
So far with our information in China and the whole of Asia. And he's self-taught, and he made his own freaking rose engine.
And he made more than one. Like it's not just one. He has yeah, because I mean, you can't get it right first time. So he made the first one, wasn't good enough. The second one was a bit better. The third one, I think he has something like 5 or 6, if I'm not mistaken. And he's so driven by that he was telling us like all the profits he just invested in making new rose engine. Like it's really, really his passion. I've very rarely seen people who are that dedicated to their craft. And I mean, I find that absolutely wonderful, like absolutely marvelous. But he is really like, to me, like a true craftsman, like, like very pure and honest in his endeavor. Like he's dedicated to it. And that's his dedication.
I see, because I think from Atelier Wen's story post on Instagram, yeah, you did mention that it takes him around like what, 8+ hours to do one dial.
Yeah. That's quite a lot of time, and you need to be really focused. It's not just like 8 hours where you can do like something else. It's like 8 hours where you're like engraving painstakingly on that very tiny surface. And if you make one small mistake, let's say like you put too much pressure on the rose engine, you go too quick, too slow, then basically the pattern will be off and your dial will be scrapped, and you start again.
And I think one thing that
you're 100% into it.
And I think one thing our viewers should really understand, yeah, even though the watch itself is 40 mm, but the dial itself is not 40 mm.
No, actually, the dial itself is the same opening as the Porcelain Odyssey. So Porcelain Odyssey was 39 mm, but here, like we have the same opening. The reason the cage is 40 mm is because of its shape, where it tapers quite a bit. Therefore, you need to have like a wider diameter. But in terms of wearability, we tend to say it's a small 40 mm.
So Master Cheng has to like concentrate of that 8 hours on that small area of surface to do the guilloche.
Yeah, and it's incredible, because I mean, when you look at it, you're like, it's so tiny. How can you have something which is so small and so detailed? Like it's absolutely incredible. And I don't know, that's lovely. And to me, like you really see this kind of like pursuit of perfection, like the person is really striving for perfection. And you look at that tiny dial, you can really see that. You see like those small details on that tiny surface. It's really wonderful.
And I believe you mentioned just now of course you have the sun mount, which is the surrounding of the watch, right?
That's the structure of the dial, yeah.
The structure of the structure of dial, and that's 4 different layers.
Yeah. You have like 4 levels. So you have like the base plate, then the guilloche bit, which is actually made of 2 plates, then the indexes, and then finally the elevated chapter ring, which is nesting into the indexes.
Right. So in terms of the version, of course we have with the silver dial with the blue and the salmon. The silver dial or the gray dial is the only one that is with the heated blue hands.
Exactly. Some people have asked us to put them on the Salmon, but personally, I prefer like those rhodium-plated hands on Salmon. So yeah, Hebrew hands are only going to be for the silver dial.
And there's also Super Luminova on all the hands.
Exactly. Just one thing on the prototypes, like the printing, the loom printing of the Wen. I know we could have done it better. So it's not that strong right now, but it's being improved as we speak. So on the regular like production pieces, it will be like quite strong. The hands are well done. Like the loom on the hands is really strong, so it lasts for a long time and it's very visible. On the ring, like I think can be done better. So that's one of our like sort of like improvement like mission those days.
Right. And for the bracelet, again, the entire, not just the bracelet, but the entire case is also in 904L steel, right? Because of the polish. One thing I don't think we mentioned as much was actually the buckle.
Oh yes, the buckle actually, because on those renders it was still the old buckle, which was just a normal buckle. But then like we really saw it and we were like, okay, so what's your? Because me, I have some watches with metal bracelet, but I never wear them. And we were thinking with Wilfried, and he was like, "Why do you never wear them?" And I told him, it's too tight, or it's too loose, or it's never the right fit. Especially often it's too tight. Like like in the summer you may like swollen a bit, or as time goes by you may get like a tiny bit larger, and then like even if it changes a tiny bit on your wrist, like then it's so unpleasant to wear. So that's why I don't wear them. And so we try to think about a way where we could like easily adjust the bracelet. At the beginning, the bracelet manufacturer, he also does like the classic extension, but it looked horrible. Then he went for something a bit more discreet, but it was not really good. And then we looked around and we saw that IWC and Moza, they have this really cool thing where you just push a button and basically you can extend the bracelet by like one link, but you exactly choose how much of that one link you want to go out. And it's pretty cool because you don't need to remove the watch. Just like, it's like, yeah, push a button. Actually, in terms of experience, it's so cool. You have this thing and you just press it and then it gets like a tiny bit like wider or more loose. And yeah, it's really nice. We're like, yeah, that's really cool. Let's go for it. So it's quite a few components. I think on Instagram, I put the exact number. I don't have it at hand, but it's something like 20 something components just to that go into like making this mechanism, this micro adjustment mechanism. So it's nice.
And of course, for people that is
useful.
and people that is interested, for people interested, Atelier Wen is super transparent with their journey. I would always encourage you guys to head up to the website and go to the journals where Robin writes really well detailed process of what they're doing, and there is one chapter on the dedicated to the buckle, and I remember is designing the best buckle in the world. Right. Yeah, so you can check that out if you guys have time. But yeah, sorry, Johnny, you were saying.
Yeah, I think it's very useful, especially in winter. The watch bracelet is a bit looser, so I think it's very sweet. This one,
Yeah, and in summer, then it gets like really warm and humid, and like you may want to have it like a bit wider, like, and in winter you have it tighter, so it's you can really have it fit without having to go see a watchmaker to remove one link, or without even having to remove it from your wrist, which is nice.
And I think one thing, keeping everything made in China, obviously you guys went for a Chinese movement, which is the customized extra flat Dandong Pecan automatic movement.
Exactly.
Yep.
So for us, I mean, going for Chinese movement, that's really like core to the brand, because it's it's our like sort of like key assumption that we believe we can make extremely good watches in China. And that there's the talent and the quality there, and indeed there is. So we have to go for a Chinese movement. But more than that, this movement that we we made with Peacock is extremely thin. It's thinner than an ETA 2892. It's thinner than a Soprod. It's thinner than anything. It's just like 3.3 millimeters, which allows us to get this thickness. Because Guilloche dial, I mean, to be fully honest with you, it's extremely thick because you need, you know, enough material to like engrave and have the pattern. So that's how we can achieve those like 9.4 millimeter thickness by having this customized super flat movement.
Right. And Robin, when do we expect the watch to be launched?
So finally, so pre-orders are supposed to open on April 2022, and they will last for a month, and then afterwards, like once we start deliveries, if we still have some pieces left, then we'll have some available at retail.
So obviously, the smart thing to do would be to buy it at pre-sale, because there will be a price difference from after the pre-sale and retail.
There is one. I think you have like 3 arguments that get into it. So indeed, there's a price difference, which is always good. There's also one of availability, in the sense that Master Cheng, you know, it takes him 8 hours to do a dial. So if it really works like all year round just for us with very little holiday, we computed we can do at most 500 dials a year, and that's if he works like solely for us. So it's also like a better way to get hands on one. Like, not sure how much more we'll have afterwards. And the third one I forgot, but mainly those two.
No worries. Yeah. So for example, because obviously if I'm doing my math correctly, if Master Cheng only does 500 dials, it means that the colors may be somewhat limited production. So for example, if you like your salmon color, you want to get it as soon as possible.
Yeah, because also we don't want, like, you know, like, okay, so we have this kind of global capacity constraint of 500 pieces per year, but we don't want like one color to be too much there. Like, I mean, we don't want to do blue watches or salmon watches. So we'll try to evenly allocate those like those units we can make like across all colors. So if one color is more popular than the others, like, doesn't mean that we'll be making more of this one. So, well, if it's more popular, then it's quite likely it will sell out faster. I don't really believe too much in gimmicks of making like sort of like fake limited editions or anything. So in this case, it's really like capacity constraint, and that's why we have to limit production on an annual basis. Yeah.
So the smart thing to do is mark it down on the calendars and make sure, you know, to log on. So if I wanted to get the watch, do I go onto your website?
Exactly. There will be a page, and you can just like place your order there. I think there's already a link. How wonderful. And yeah, easy as this.
And another thing is, people who have not already subscribed to your email subscription, they should, to get the most updated
they
news.
should, because we announce everything there in advance. We give updates. We also give updates that we don't give anywhere else, like through our newsletter. So definitely, and we don't spam, because I'm the one writing that newsletter, and I don't have that much free time. So, you know, even if I wanted to spam you, let me reassure you, I don't have enough time to spam you. I don't just do Atelier Wen. I also have a job on the side, where I'm also a slave there. So don't worry, I won't spam you. I write at most like once a month. So yeah.
All right. Well, Robin, I think Johnny and I both agree. We really do appreciate your time with us today. It's been a super informative little session, and I hope that our viewers can have a better understanding of who Atelier Wen is, because one of the main big theme for me today is the amount of attention to detail you guys have really put it into the timepiece. You know, it's really amazing what you guys are doing, and I really do hope that you guys are able to continue. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. Thank you so much, Johnny, as well, for having me here. It was also a great pleasure to like explain you all about like what we've been busy with like since what 2018. So yeah, they definitely like thanks a lot.
One more question, Robin, for you. So
Yeah.
I know we haven't launched Perception just yet, but what's the future for Atelier Wen like? Where do you see you guys in the next few years?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you know, I told you like now we want to be sort of like less constrained in our approach. Like when we say we want to make the best Chinese watches possible, we want that to be absolute. So I feel like in the future we'll go more and more towards that direction. We can't just jumpstart from the Porcelain Odyssey to like a 10K like fully handmade watches. That's okay, that's not very reasonable. But as time goes by, we want to have more and more handmade features, more and more crafts, more and more like really talented people who come and make absolutely wonderful components and pieces. So there are really cool things we're exploring right now. We're thinking at some point about working with one of the Chinese AICI watchmaker to design our own movement, which would be extremely cool. We're exploring other crafts. We've been put in touch with an enameler who is the grandson of like the last enameler who was supplying the Cheng court. So really one of the very best guy in his category. We are in touch with some Chinese contemporary artists, like really good one, like Yue Minjin. So at some point we also could be doing like something with them. So you know, like sort of being uncompromised. It's about everything. It's of course like manufacturing, making, but it's also sort of like the design and creative process. Like how can we really go to the fullest extent of that vision, and artists like him could be a way to explore that. So yeah, as time goes by, in a nutshell, we'll be moving more and more towards that direction.
Perfect, man. Perfect. Johnny, anything you wanna say? All good?
Thank you for sharing and looking forward to your watches.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
We're definitely looking forward to getting the watch on our hands.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you guys. Well, soon I'll send you some protos. I just need to finally figure out that logistics, and
No worries, man.
You'll be able to see them in the flesh.
Okay,
the
well,
metal.
And Robin, we're not going to take too much of your time because I know you have another job to get back to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll definitely keep in touch. But again, thank you so much for your time today, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much to the two of you. It was really a pleasure. First time doing this as well, but it was really great, and really happy to have been able to share with you guys.
All right, then. You take it easy, Robin. Now, I'll talk to you next time.
Well, thank you so much, and talk very soon, guys.